I really enjoyed looking back on Scooby Doo on Zombie Island, so to keep the Halloween retrospectives going for all of you nostalgia lovers, I'm looking back on the second direct-to-video film in the Scooby Doo series, Scooby Doo and the Witch's Ghost. After solving the mystery of the disappearances on Moonscar Island, the Mystery Inc. gang is at it again, this time in a museum. The gang are all in disguises to blend in with the exhibits as they spot a man named Dr. Dean walking down the hallway. As he keeps going, he is surprised to see the sarcophaguses opening on their own as he backs up and without noticing turns the museum lights on. Shaggy and Scooby, dressed in prehistoric outfits, spot the sarcophaguses open as two figures come out and prepare their weapons as they head to the direction of Dr. Dean, but Shaggy alerts him that they're behind him and gets out of the way before the figures strike. They kinda look a bit like gladiators. Well, whatever they are, they notice Shaggy and Scooby and head their way, but Scooby releases a net that lands on them. But they break out and chase Shaggy and Scooby-Doo around the museum. I really like hearing Billy Ray Cyrus do the Scooby-Doo theme song during this chase scene. As the gladiators keep chasing the pair, they get tripped and are stopped as the Mystery Inc. gang catches up to Shaggy and Scooby with the police and Dr. Dean. Shaggy tells the gang that they had some help from horror writer Ben Ravencroft, whom Velma is a big fan of. He's kinda like Stephen King in their universe. Ben unmasks the gladiators as two disgruntled archaeologists who work with the museum, angry that Dr. Dean cut their funding. One of the archaeologists says, "We would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for this meddling writer." Well, that's a new one. Even Fred hates being called a meddling kid. As the archaeologists are taken away, Ben tells the gang that he has been doing research at the museum for his novel and saw the archaeologist acting suspiciously. Velma introduces herself to Ben and tells him what a fan she is, and Ben tells him that he admires their mystery work and invites the gang to join him on his trip home to Oak Haven, Massachusetts. Velma accepts and then consults the rest of the crew. Daphne says, "We could use a break from all these spooky mysteries." When Ben says that Oak Haven has one of the best restaurants in New England, Shaggy and Scooby also accept the invite. Velma drives with Ben, and the rest of the gang take the Mystery Machine en route to Massachusetts. Velma talks with Ben about his work, and Ben shuts her up by the time they make it to Oak Haven, only to be stuck in traffic. Ben and Fred notice that there seem to be more people than there usually are. Ben and the Mystery Inc. gang go ask Mayor Corey what's going on, and the mayor says, "I can see you've brought some friends, and their dog." And just like in Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island, Scooby says, "Rog? Rare!" Mayor Corey welcomes the Mystery Inc. gang to Oak Haven, and Ben asks why there are so many people around. The mayor says that business until recently was very slow, or as he put it, slower than maple syrup on a cold day. Just then, a man named Mr. McKnight arrives and greets Ben home, giving him a t-shirt for a Hex Girls concert. Ben had no idea that a concert was happening, but Fred appears to know who the Hex Girls are. Daphne asks him, "You know them?" And Fred says, "Just now." As it turns out, the Hex Girls are performing at the Oak Haven Autumn Fest. Mayor Corey says that the Hex Girls are a local band with kind of a spooky vibe to them. So, like pop-punk style, goth, metal. Ben reads the t-shirt, "I met the ghost of Oak Haven and lived." Shaggy and Scooby are not surprisingly frightened by this, but Velma's interested in this apparent ghost. Mayor Corey tells Velma that the ghost is Ben's ancestor Sarah Ravencroft. Ben refutes the claim, but Mayor Corey insists that there have been some regular ghost sightings. Fred and Daphne come up with the theory that she is haunting the town because her spirit was disturbed by the town's construction. After all of the ghost talk is done, Mayor Corey shows everyone some of the festival, which includes a reenactment of the town's life in the 1600s as done by the locals. Daphne really likes the Cornhusk dolls. Just as long as they're not voodoo dolls that are controlling anybody, I'm not worried. And Shaggy finds the stalks really fun. He and Scooby are offered a chance to churn butter. Scooby starts to churn the butter and pretends to play the guitar with it. Velma talks with Mayor Corey about his earlier claims about ghost sightings. The mayor tells Velma that what Fred and Daphne said earlier is true and that Ben's ancestor was persecuted as a witch. Annoyed, Ben tells Mayor Corey his side of the story. Sarah Ravencroft practiced natural healing with medicine and was falsely accused because of how eccentric she was. Scooby continues to admire the Cornhusk dolls and places one of its hats on his head. "It's a perfect fit, Scoob!" But it blows away to a gopher's hole, and a gopher catches it and takes it back with him into the hole. Scooby puts his hand into the hole to try and get it back, but the gopher responds by biting him. So in retaliation, Scooby digs after it, but instead finds an old shoe buckle. Shaggy puts it on his shoe and wants to see if Scooby can find a second one. According to Mayor Corey, several old items were found when the area was cleared for construction. Ben asks the mayor if a book was among one of the found items, having searched a long time for Sarah's old journal in an effort to clear the family's name. But no book has been found. Fred asks why everyone assumes that it's Sarah's ghost who is apparently haunting the town, and according to Mayor Corey, the ghost admitted it. I see, and how does he know that? Anyway, he says to Fred, "Maybe you'll see her tonight." Moving away from the ghost talk, Shaggy and Scooby start to get hungry like always, so Mayor Corey walks them to the restaurant. Ben asks if the rest of the gang would like to tag along or visit his studio. Velma, of course, is very interested in seeing Ben's studio, and Ben offers to pay for Shaggy and Scooby's meal. Daphne says to him, "You're gonna regret that offer." When the pair arrive at the restaurant, they immediately fall in love with the food just by smelling it. Scooby spots a steak, and before a customer can enjoy it, Scooby drools on his shoulder. Even when the customer moves it away, Scooby can't keep his eyes off of it. Seeing how hungry they are, the restaurant's owner Jack takes Shaggy and Scooby to a special table. Jack offers Scooby a bone, but apparently Scooby's allergic to bones. Shaggy tells Jack, "We'll have whatever that great smell is." According to Jack, it's pot roast, roast turkey, clam chowder, ham and beans, and apple cinnamon pie. Liking how it sounds, Shaggy asks for 2 orders of it all. Meanwhile, Ben shows the other 3 around his house. Velma finds herself very enthused by everything, and Ben allows her to sit at his desk where he wrote all of his first novels before moving to Europe. Fred shows interest in a portrait on the wall, which Ben says is of Sarah. Ben tells Fred that when it came to medicine, Sarah's approach was more spiritual, using herbs and the earth's powers. Ben explains that Sarah had helped many people who weren't able to afford medical treatment. Ben describes Sarah as a Wiccan and wants to prove her innocence. Velma attests that Wiccans are quite often misunderstood. Ben is impressed by Velma's knowledge and tells her that his own research on Sarah and the Wiccans led to his career as a mystery writer. Back at the restaurant, Shaggy and Scooby's enjoyment of the food draws the attention of the other customers, who appear startled by their gluttonous behavior and their somewhat poor dining manners. They just stare at them while the pair keep on eating. Jack comes back with more food and very nervously sets it down. How much room does that table have? Look at all the food that's on it. Shaggy and Scooby dig right in, and Jack chuckles, "I've never seen anything like this." He asks them if they are even tasting it before they hork it down, and Shaggy says that it's the best food that they have ever had. But it starts to gross out the customers. Fred, Daphne, and Velma come in and find Shaggy and Scooby still enjoying themselves. Velma asks if there is anything else left, and in walks Jack, who leaves for the market. So, no, there's nothing left. Realizing how late it's getting, Fred suggests that they head to the village to see if the supposed ghost is going to show up, but Shaggy and Scooby turn it down, claiming that they haven't had dessert yet. Which honestly surprises me, because, again, they're having so much. Fred, Daphne, and Velma take off, and Daphne tells them to meet them at the village when they're done, as they head there to meet Ben. At the village, Fred, Daphne, Velma, and Ben are waiting alongside of many other villagers, who are tired of waiting for the ghost, and they all leave. Ben is disappointed because he wanted to ask Sarah where her journal is hidden. Daphne and Fred decide to keep waiting, and Fred surmises that it's probably just a bedsheet attached to a wire. If he thinks that, I'm just thinking about what happened last time. Shaggy and Scooby leave the restaurant and thank Jack for the meal. For the restaurant. And Jack looks at all of the dishes that have to be done. So Shaggy and Scooby make their way to the village and see a lot of cars going the opposite direction, and they notice how spooky it feels with no one around. But then Scooby sees a shadow coming their way, but it's just a group of girls. So Shaggy and Scooby fix themselves up as the girls arrive, but their frightening looking makeup scares them off. But running away from them worked off their humongous meal, making Shaggy and Scooby hungry again. But they get frightened again when a ghost witch appears and chases Shaggy and Scooby away and throws fireballs at them. But as they're getting away, Shaggy and Scooby crash into the rest of the gang. Velma asks what's going on. Scooby Doo answers, "Roast!" Ben wonders what he means by that, considering that they had so many helpings of food. But when Scooby says, "Rich's roast," Velma knows exactly what Scooby is talking about. Fred asks them to show them where she is, and Shaggy doesn't want to because of the fireballs. But when he shows them where, as you'd expect, there's nothing there. But the gang spots some clues such as dust, fallen branches, the tops of the trees in perfectly straight lines, and a ghouly green glow in the distance. The gang head to its direction to figure out what's going on, and they follow it to the village, where Shaggy sees the witches that they spotted before being chased by the witch's ghost, but it turns out to be the Hex Girls. The gang stays to watch as Fred seems to really enjoy it, making Daphne jealous. The Hex Girls finish their rehearsal and recognize Ben. The lead singer and guitar player Thorn introduces herself to Ben, having always wanted to meet him. Luna, the band's keyboard player, also is a fan of Ben's work. The drummer, Dusk, smiles at Shaggy and Scooby, and they still appear frightened by the makeup. The Hex Girls take off to continue rehearsing, and Fred and Velma start to find them suspicious. Velma leaves Daphne with Fred while she goes to further inspect Shaggy and Scooby's ghost sighting. Ben, Velma, Shaggy, and Scooby head back to the woods, and their first clue is tire tracks. They follow the tracks to some kind of creepy barn, and the first person who comes out of it is Mayor Corey. Velma has Shaggy and Scooby follow him while Velma and Ben go check out the barn, but Shaggy finds it a bit too frightening. Eventually, when he sees how scary the barn looks, he gives in. The pair follow Mayor Corey down the street, and every time he thinks he's being followed, Shaggy and Scooby find something to hide behind. When Velma tries to get into the barn, she finds that it's locked. And with Fred and Daphne on their own trail, Daphne asks Fred why he always pairs her with him. Fred starts to answer the question a bit nervously, but then sees the Hex Girls talking about performing a ritual. Fred is positive that the girls are involved in the mystery, with Thorn being the mastermind behind it all. At the barn, Ben lifts Velma up to try to get inside, and it finally works. From the other side, Velma opens the door to let Ben in. Meanwhile, Shaggy and Scooby follow the mayor to a hardware store and to a bed and breakfast, while Velma and Ben discover a cherry-picking truck in the barn. Well, that explains the tire tracks. Fred and Daphne follow Thorn to what appears to be some kind of a shed, where she performs some kind of ritual mixing stuff together in a bowl. Daphne starts to believe that Thorn is a witch. Shaggy and Scooby follow Mayor Corey all the way to this warehouse. When Shaggy and Scooby make their way inside, they reunite with Sarah's ghost, angry that the pair interrupted her sleep. Shaggy and Scooby try to run away, but they get stuck in the dirt, making Sarah fly past them. So they head the other way and crash into the wall, and as they're running away, they run into Mayor Corey, and then Velma and Ben, knocking their glasses off. I find it funny when they pick up the wrong glasses by mistake, but it's very much like in the classic Scooby Doo shows, where Velma loses her glasses and she's feeling the floor to find them. Fred and Daphne meet up with the rest of them, with Shaggy and Scooby shivering in fear inside of the mailbox. Shaggy explains to the gang what happened. But then Mayor Corey arrives and also wonders what's going on. The gang, Ben, and Mayor Corey head to the warehouse and, as usual, there's nothing there. Mayor Corey says nothing except a damaged wall. Realizing that Oakhaven might be too scary for Shaggy and Scooby, Velma feels that they should leave. Honestly, I was more scared of Moonscar Island. Shaggy and Scooby are really happy to hear Velma say that until she says that she needs one more clue before the mystery can be solved. Mayor Corey says, "Oh great," and then offers to do anything to help. After he leaves, Velma explains her plan to everyone else. The first step is to head back to the village where the Hex Girls are all set up for their show. As the group starts playing the Hex Girls' instruments, the group arrives and stops them. According to Thorn, Ben asks them to play a part in their plan. At that moment, Sarah's ghost arrives again and throws fireballs at the stage. Sarah's ghost chases Scooby, Shaggy, and Velma, but Velma trips and falls down. She calls out, "Now!" And Fred and Daphne whip a tree branch at her and she goes flying into what looks like a soccer goal. Hold up. I thought that Sarah was a ghost. Wouldn't she be able to fly right through the tree branch? And look at the soccer goal. She actually looks like she actually hit it. If she's a ghost, then she wouldn't be affected at all. But that's when it's revealed, like classic Scooby Doo, that Sarah's ghost is actually a disguise. More specifically, Mr. McKnight, who also is Thorn's father. Thorn, whose real name is Sally, is surprised that her dad is responsible for all of this, and Daphne's even more surprised that Thorn wasn't involved. Mayor Corey arrives and also is surprised to see that Mr. McKnight is the reason for it all. Velma explains that she found flash powder where Shaggy and Scooby saw the ghost in the first place, and that the fireballs are just flash paper that Mr. McKnight is throwing using a device strapped to his wrist that the Hex Girls use as a stage prop. She also explains that the cherry-picking truck that they found in the barn had an extension device to make Mr. McKnight fly above the trees, with a fan creating the wind effects. But who could have helped him with all of this? According to Velma, it was done with the help of Jack. Yes, the same Jack who owns the restaurant that Shaggy and Scooby ate. But apparently, they didn't work alone. Mayor Corey is surprised that so many Oakhaven residents were involved in this plot, but Velma confronts him for making her suspicious in the first place. Ben is very unhappy that his friends were trying to make his ancestor look bad. With the mystery solved, stick around, Ben takes the Mystery Inc. gang and the Hex Girls back to his place. The Hex Girls are very interested to learn about Sarah and Wiccans. When Ben tells them that it upsets him that everyone thinks that she was a witch, Fred and Daphne apologize for thinking the same thing from the Hex Girls. But Daphne still has questions about what Thorn was doing, and Dusk explains that they only do that as a gimmick for their band. Thorn explains that it wasn't even a ritual, she was just soothing her vocal cords. Shaggy is still a bit freaked out by the makeup and fangs, but Luna explains that they were made by her dad, a dentist. Mayor Corey comes in to apologize to Ben for using Sarah as a publicity stunt, and Mr. McKnight explains that using Sarah was easy because they had dug up her grave. Ben is surprised and was unaware of the fact that Sarah had a grave. Mayor Corey and Mr. McKnight tell Ben that they found Sarah's grave marker when building the village. It was discovered in a pile of dirt and rocks, keeping it a secret from Ben because they didn't want to upset him. But Ben's a little upset that her book was never found. Mayor Corey tells Ben that since they couldn't find anything else, they have no idea where her grave is. Mr. McKnight has a hunch as to where it could be, and based on his theory, Velma has an idea. She asks Shaggy and Scooby to take her to where they found the shoe buckle from before, which is actually a lock from Sarah's journal. Scooby takes the gang to a tree stump. Velma believes that it's where Sarah did her healing, but it was cut down, so Ben never recognized it. Velma has Scooby dig back into the dirt, but Scooby refuses. But he changes his mind when Velma offers him 2 Scooby snacks. Scooby digs deep into the dirt and ends up finding something. When Ben asks him what, Scooby answers, "Rocks!" But he actually meant box. I have to say, the way that Scooby talks, especially in this, is hilarious. Scooby pulls it out and Ben is very happy. He opens the box and pulls out a book that has a very evil face on it. Ben appears to be very happy looking through the pages, and Velma points out that it doesn't look like the journal of a Wiccan healer. Ben turns to Velma with a very creepy smile and tells her that it's actually a spellbook, confirming the earlier rumors of Sarah being a witch to be true and that he is a warlock. Sarah was actually imprisoned in her spellbook by the Wiccans. Velma feels betrayed by Ben as Ben explains how this all came about. From reading about Mystery Inc., he knew that Mystery Inc. could help him find the book, going as far as to organize the earlier scheme at the museum at the start of the video as a way to lure the gang to the museum. Fred confronts Mayor Corey and Mr. McKnight for being involved in it, but they insist that they were not involved. Ben confirms that they are telling the truth, although he attests that the fake ghost was the town's idea. Daphne asks Ben why he went through this scheme instead of asking Mystery Inc. to help him find the book in the first place, but Velma already knows why. He knew that the gang wouldn't have helped him if they knew what the book actually was, and Velma looks like she's about ready to throw hands. Ben plans to unlock Sarah's power from out of the spellbook, awakening his powers and frightening Mayor Corey and Mr. McKnight away, but Ben uses his powers to lock them in the stocks. The Hex Girls head over to save Thorne's dad, but Ben wraps them in yarn. Daphne and Fred manage to get their hands on Ben in an attempt to grab the book, but he flies away, creating a ring of fire around Fred, Daphne, and Velma. Using the spellbook, Ben summons Sarah, but Shaggy and Scooby show up in the mystery machine, using the dirt from the ground to put out the fire around the other 3. Fred, Daphne, and Velma head into the van as it takes off. Ben tries to stop them by zapping a tree for it to collapse on top of the van, but Velma insists that they go back for the book. Shaggy asks, "Book? Can't we just wait for the movie?" As Ben chases the gang, Shaggy crashes into a pile of pumpkins, which roll off and Ben slips on them. With him on the ground, Scooby grabs the book out of his hands. To stop them, Ben uses his powers to flatten the mystery machine's tires as it crashes through a gift shop, a hayfield, and a turkey coop before completely stopping. With the van now stopped, Ben takes the spellbook back and summons Sarah. Sarah's ghost arrives as Ben introduces himself to her as a descendant of the modern world. Sarah looks around and notices that not much has really changed. Ben tells Sarah that he wants to become more powerful, and she just evilly laughs it off. He demands that because he released her, she should serve him, and Sarah refuses, only wanting to destroy the world as revenge for being imprisoned. So Ben went through all of these schemes just to have his ancestor hate him. What a waste. Ben is surprised by this, only wanting to rule the world, not destroy it. Sarah then threatens to destroy Ben as well, and feeling as if his plan isn't working, Ben attempts to imprison Sarah back into the book, but only Wiccans can imprison Sarah, and she zaps Ben into this green bubble. Velma comes up with a plan. The first step is to have Shaggy and Scooby take the spellbook. At first, they refuse, but this time Velma offers an entire box of Scooby snacks. Fred distracts Sarah, but when she throws a fireball at him, it disintegrates the box of Scooby snacks. As they go to get the spellbook, Fred says to Sarah, 400 years hasn't helped your aim, lady." Angry, Sarah chases after Fred, Daphne, and Velma, even using a spell to make pumpkins come alive to chase them. But Velma manages to escape one of them as it crashes into a tree. While Ben cries to be released, Shaggy and Scooby take the book, but Sarah notices and uses her powers to make a turkey grow larger to frighten the pair off. Daphne gets captured by one of the pumpkin creatures, and when Fred tries to stop it, he gets trapped by it as well. Velma spots another one coming close to their direction, and she pours a butter churn on the ground, making butter spill so that the pumpkin creature can slip on it, and it crashes into the other one. Both of them splatter on the ground. Once Shaggy and Scooby escape the turkey, they meet up again with Sarah. Sarah tries to knock them out, but knocks out the turkey instead. Once it regains consciousness, Scooby and Shaggy are dressed up and pretend that they are preparing for Thanksgiving, which scares the turkey off. With Sarah still chasing after the pair, Daphne and Velma free the Hex Girls. Dusk and Luna leave to get away from the witch, but Velma asks Thorn to stay to read Ben's spell from before as a way to defeat Sarah. Because she isn't a witch, Thorn doesn't believe that she can help, but because she is part Wiccan, Velma tells her that because only Wiccans can imprison Sarah into the book, Thorn is the only one who can help them. Meanwhile, while still running away from Sarah, looking even more terrified, Sarah grabs onto Scooby's tail and says, "Give me my book, you meddling hound!" And you all know what comes next. Round? Rear! Shaggy tries to free Scooby by splashing well water in Sarah's face, but unlike in The Wizard of Oz, it doesn't work. Even Sarah finds that pathetic. Although it does get her to release Scooby, but only for her to capture Shaggy. Shaggy gets so scared that he throws the empty bucket and it lands on top of Sarah, blocking her vision. Now that she can't see, Scooby gets Shaggy out of Sarah's hands. With them now free, Shaggy takes the book back from Sarah as she tries to pull the bucket off of her head. Once Sarah manages to do that by using her powers, she turns more pumpkins into pumpkin creatures to chase the pair, and they trap Shaggy. But he throws the book to Scooby, and he catches it. Not wanting to give up, Sarah turns a tree into a monster, which catches Scooby and he throws the book to Daphne. But she gets trapped by the tree's roots and she gives the book to Fred. But the roots trap him as well and he throws it to Velma, who gives it to Thorn before the roots can capture the book. Sarah starts to close in on Thorn and Velma as Thorn reads the spell. And she finishes just as Sarah gets her hands on the book, returning everything to normal. Sarah tries to escape, but she gets sucked back into the book, and now that Ben is free of the bubble, she pulls him in with her. As soon as they are both imprisoned in the book, a branch from a burning tree lands on it. Shaggy says that Ben's last book would have been a hot bestseller. The Hex Girls free Mr. McKnight and Mayor Corey from the stocks. Mayor Corey looks at the state of the village and wonders what they'll do for their autumn festival. The Hex Girls offer to perform, but Mayor Corey feels as if they'll need a bigger attraction. So Shaggy points Mayor Corey to the huge turkey. Talk about a bigger attraction. In the next scene, the Hex Girls do end up putting on a show with the Mystery Inc. gang performing on stage with them. Even Mayor Corey, Mr. McKnight, and the turkey enjoy themselves. And there we go, that's it, that's all. Scooby Doo and the Witch's Ghost. I hope you enjoyed listening to me talk about it. I'm gonna do one more Scooby Doo retrospective for Halloween, and I'm gonna do some others in between. So I'll see you with those really soon.